The hum of the engine was the only constant. My headlights cut through the darkness in thin, trembling slices. Beyond the narrow beam, the night pressed in like a wet cloth, dense, silent, infinite. I had been driving for hours, or maybe minutes. Time had started to feel irrelevant. The highway had no name here, no signposts, no markings to reassure me I was still on any known route. My cell phone flickered, no service, every few seconds, like it was warning me. I glanced down at the GPS mounted to the dashboard. Its glow was almost soothing, a rectangle of cold light against the black interior of the car. And yet, I felt my chest tighten when I read the new instructions. Rerouting. It had started an hour ago with small, inconvenient detours. I'd tried to ignore them, roads I knew were closed, bridges under repair, streets that didn't exist. But the device had insisted, rerouting me despite my protests. I'd tapped the screen, typed in my destination manually, even restarted the app. Nothing worked. And now, the display read something new. Destination. Final entry. I laughed nervously. Final entry, I muttered to myself. That's ominous. The GPS chimed, insistent, impatient. The route blinked into existence, a thin neon blue line stretching ahead into the darkness. I followed it. The road became narrower, almost impossibly so, lined by trees whose branches clawed at the headlights. I tried to ignore the feeling, the creeping sensation that the forest was leaning closer, waiting. The engine thrummed, low and insistent, but it no longer felt like it belonged to me. Outside, the world had become too quiet. No wind, no insects, just the cold, unbroken night. A bend in the road came that shouldn't have existed. I swerved, heart pounding. The GPS didn't pause. The voice was calm, even cheerful. Turn left, it said. I hesitated, my hands gripping the wheel. To my left, there was nothing but a wall of trees. No road. The car didn't stop me, though. My tires ground over unseen gravel, the suspension groaning. The GPS updated, recalculating, its screen now reflecting something impossible. The road ahead bent back on itself in ways that defied geometry. I tried to laugh again, but it caught in my throat. The line on the map shifted, twisted, stretched into loops that made no sense. The landmarks changed. A farmhouse appeared where there had only been fields. A bridge arched over nothing. I slammed my palms against the wheel, willing the device to obey reason. Turn off. I don't want this, I shouted. But it ignored me. The screen pulsed. The words rearranged themselves. ETA, unknown. Final entry. Initiated. The voice, still calm, still human, repeated. Continue straight. I forced myself to breathe. Rationalize. Surely it was a glitch, a bug, some cruel error in the system. Yet as I drove, I began to notice details I shouldn't have. The GPS began showing locations from my past, houses I'd lived in, streets I hadn't seen in decades, even the playground where I'd scraped my knee as a child. Timestamps accompanied them, but none matched reality. Yesterday. Last year. 10 years ago. The road behind me twisted and disappeared. I could no longer retrace my path. The dark had swallowed it completely. Every attempt to turn back was met with the same instruction: continue forward. I tried to turn off the device entirely, unplug it, smash it against the dashboard. The screen went black, then flickered back to life. And now, the display had changed again. It showed me, or at least, a version of me. A small icon, a dot labeled with my name, moving along a route that I had never seen, never driven. And yet, I recognized it. Every misstep, every wrong turn I'd made that night, was already recorded, already plotted. The GPS wasn't merely guiding me, it was tracking me, recording me, anticipating me. I swallowed hard. The headlights illuminated a curve in the road that should not exist. The trees bent outward, creating a tunnel, but the tunnel was impossibly long. I felt the car stretching beneath me, stretching into dimensions I couldn't comprehend. The hum of the engine had deepened, resonating in my bones. I could hear it in my skull. And then the whispers started. Not through the speakers, not audible in the traditional sense, but in my mind. Faint, Insistent. Names. Dates. Places I had tried to forget. Secrets I hadn't even admitted to myself. The GPS pulsed in response, almost alive, almost aware. I screamed. I tried to stop, to pull over, but the car did not obey. The map stretched ahead infinitely, then contracted, then split into multiple paths. All of them ended at the same point. Final entry. I realized, with a cold certainty, that this was not a destination in space. It was a destination in time. In memory. In record. I tried to reason. Could I be hallucinating? Exhaustion. Sleep deprivation. Yet the GPS displayed one final, undeniable fact. Every route I'd taken, every choice I'd made, every accident, every encounter, every failure. And at the end of the list, in bold, flashing red letters, your final entry is in progress. I understood then. Final entry was not a place I could drive to. It was me. My history. My record. My inevitable conclusion. And the device, this impossibly intelligent, impossibly invasive device, was writing it as I drove. I tried to reverse, to flee, to shut my eyes and pray it would end. But the GPS had anticipated me. Roads vanished, the landscape folded around itself, and every turn I attempted brought me back to the same glowing line. Final entry. Always final entry. I reached for the phone, trying to call someone, anyone, to prove I was still here, still alive. No service. I had never felt more alone. The GPS pulsed again, insistent, commanding. Continue. The forest shifted. My childhood street merged with the interstate I'd taken to escape a past mistake. A bridge I'd never crossed appeared overhead. The voice spoke again, whispering my fears, my regrets, my sins. I was both driver and driven, observer and observed. I realized that this record, final entry, had begun long before I sat behind the wheel. Every memory, every choice, had been catalogued. And now, the device was closing the loop. I was the final entry. And I was the record. The headlights flickered. The GPS glowed bright, white, impossibly white. The hum became a roar. The tunnel of trees collapsed in on itself, folding time, space, and memory into a singular point of awareness. I thought I could resist, that I could wrest control, that I could escape. But I had been followed by myself all along. And in the cold glow of the dashboard, I understood the truth. There was no arrival. There was only the recording. There was only me, endlessly logged, endlessly rewritten. And then the map went blank. The screen read only one thing. Final entry complete. Outside, the forest was silent again. But I knew the record continued. Somewhere, deep in the folds of the GPS's impossible memory, I was still driving. Always driving. Always the entry. I turned the key. The engine didn't respond. The glow of the GPS dimmed, then disappeared. I sat in the dark, breathing, trembling. And in the stillness, I felt it. Every choice I had made that night, every regret, every misstep, catalogued, archived, finalized. Final entry. Not a place. Not a moment. Me. And now, it had begun to write the next chapter. The hum of the engine was constant, a low, mechanical heartbeat that filled the cabin. Outside, darkness stretched endlessly, unbroken by any lights or signs, unrelieved by the sky, which had long since vanished into black. I had no destination, only the instinct to keep moving forward. The stretch of highway I was on seemed to exist outside maps, outside reason. It began subtly. A twitch in the lines painted along the asphalt, the white edges that guided me through the night. At first, I thought it was fatigue, a trick of the headlights reflecting unevenly off the reflective paint. But as I drove, I noticed the lines shifting, not just wiggling, but rearranging themselves. A spiral formed. I blinked. The road ahead, which had always stretched straight, now bent inward, the lane markings curling in a perfect helix. The center of the spiral glowed under the yellow light of the stripes, impossibly precise, as though the asphalt itself had been melted and remolded. I swerved, instinctively, but the steering wheel resisted. The car hummed with tension, tires gripping the road as if the spiral itself had taken hold. I tried to rationalize. Heat shimmer, fatigue, hallucination, but the sensation was tactile. I could feel the asphalt's texture, rough and granular beneath the tires, stretching and coiling with every rotation of the spiral. The headlights caught the edges of the lines, reflecting off them in ways that shouldn't have been possible. They bent upward, then inward, forming shapes that my eyes refused to interpret correctly. The further I drove, the tighter the spiral wound itself, pulling the car into its impossible geometry. I gripped the wheel, my knuckles white. Every attempt to straighten the car was met with resistance, as though the road itself were corralling me. Panic rose, hot and suffocating. I tried to turn around, but there was no road behind me. Only darkness. Only the spiral, wrapping around, swallowing the night. The hum of the engine began to shift, a subtle modulation that seemed to match the curvature of the asphalt. A low, oscillating vibration ran through the chassis, like the pulse of some enormous, hidden organism. I could hear my own heartbeat over it, or maybe it had become part of the rhythm. I wasn't sure where I ended and the machine began. The spiral stretched infinitely ahead, or so it seemed. I counted rotations, 3, 4, 5, but the numbering lost meaning. Time had started to distort. I glanced at the clock, it flickered, numbers impossible, 25, 73, 18, 91, 0. I tried to call for help. My phone displayed no signal, in tiny, mocking letters. No radio stations came through either. The hum of the engine was the only sound. I forced myself to look outside, to try to gauge distance, speed. But the lines on the asphalt continued their impossible rearrangement. Each lap of the spiral felt simultaneously longer and shorter than the last. Trees appeared, or maybe memory suggested them, dark, skeletal shapes at the periphery of the headlights. Each time I blinked, they shifted, closer or farther, receding only to return in different configuration. I tried to remember how I'd gotten here. A drive home, a detour, an empty highway. Nothing matched. Memory itself began to fray. Names, dates, small intimate details of my own life, slipped into fog. Even recollections I was certain of, the face of my mother, the route to my childhood home, twisted into uncertainty. The spiral didn't just bend space, it was rewriting my sense of place, of identity. I slammed the brakes. The tires screamed, gravel and asphalt shredding under the strain. The car slowed but didn't stop. The spiral didn't pause for me. I twisted the wheel violently, expecting to escape outward, but the road yielded nothing. Every turn seemed preordained, every path folding back on itself. Optical illusion, I muttered, but the words rang hollow. How could an illusion have texture? How could it tug at the steering wheel, modulate the engine, rearrange itself according to my motion? I tried to force myself to leave the spiral, to pick a direction and hold it. But the lines shifted again, curling inward, guiding me as though the asphalt were alive, intelligent, patient. The farther I drove, the more the spiral wrapped around me. It became impossible to distinguish beginning from end, entry from exit. I caught glimpses in the rearview mirror. A faint glow, like a phosphorescent smear, traced the curve behind me. It followed my car, a reflection of movement that had no source in the real world. I turned to look directly at it through the passenger side window. The light pulsed, synchronized with my own heartbeat. I saw shapes in it, ghostly, geometric forms, spiraling inward, ever inward. I screamed. The sound echoed, bouncing through the empty cabin, over the hum of the engine, over the spiral's pull. But it had no effect. The road twisted tighter, the lines coiling, threading the car into a cage I could no longer comprehend. The headlights, which had once revealed only blackness beyond the asphalt, began to illuminate impossible angles. The edges of the highway bent over themselves, over the car, creating loops that defied physics. My tires touched the road in some places, floated over it in others. Gravity became a suggestion, a fleeting concept. I realized, with cold, unrelenting clarity, that this was not a road. It was a mechanism. The spiral had never been meant to be traversed, it had been designed to contain, to trap, to pull inward until all motion, all memory, all self, could be measured and catalogued. I thought of my life, of all the choices that had led me to this point. The spiral didn't care. It had no need for reason, no concern for the world outside. It existed for one purpose: containment. And I had entered it. I tried to stop thinking, tried to let myself sink into the inevitability. The hum of the engine became a chant, a litany, a pulse synchronized with my own failing comprehension. The lines ahead glowed brighter, spiraling faster, until the car itself seemed suspended at the center of an impossible vortex. I touched the dashboard. Everything was smooth, seamless, unreal. The steering wheel no longer responded. I was not driving. I was being driven, pulled, folded, twisted into the spiral's geometry. My vision blurred. Memory, identity, sensation, they all stretched thin. I remembered nothing, yet I remembered everything. The asphalt beneath me hummed. The lines pulsed. The spiral had fully enclosed me now. I was inside it, of it, a component of its eternal design. And then I understood. There was no exit. No matter how far I turned the wheel, no matter how desperately I tried to flee, the spiral would continue, endlessly coiling. Every rotation erased and rewrote the previous. Space was no longer a container for me. I had become part of space, its prisoner, its axis, its measure. I screamed once more, and it was absorbed instantly, swallowed by the geometry of the spiral. The engine's hum became my own voice, my own heartbeat, my own thought. Time had folded, twisted, vanished. I existed only as a point on the lines, traced in eternal rotation, catalogued in infinite curvature. The spiral was perfect. It had no beginning, no end. And I would never leave.